Tonight, Hezbollah confirms its leader has been killed in an Israeli airstrike. The death of Hassan Nasrallah and why the killing could dramatically reshape conflicts in the Middle East.
I want to leave, but I'm scared to leave at the same time.
As Canadians in Lebanon are urged to leave.
We never anticipated it to be this devastating.
Dozens dead and millions without power after Helene's catastrophic march across the U.S. Southeast.
These storms are taking the soul out of me, and I know that's how people are feeling down here.
Pressure is mounting for international students trying to make Canada a permanent home.
Time is working against these students, leaving them in massive crisis.
And a massive dino discovery.
It also has a lot of features that we've never actually seen before in this particular species of dinosaur.
Unearthed in Alberta, the fossil find reveals a treasure trove of information.
CTV National News with Heather Butts.
Good evening. The Lebanese militant group Hezbollah has confirmed its longtime leader, Hassan Nasrallah, was killed in an Israeli airstrike that targeted his bunker in Beirut. It's seen as a major escalation that threatens an all-out regional war. In a social media post, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau says he was the leader of a terrorist organization that attacked and killed innocent civilians, causing immense suffering across the region. Trudeau reiterated calls for an urgent ceasefire, while Ottawa today announced millions of dollars in humanitarian aid. CTV's Colton Prale starts us off.
Wailing cries echo in Beirut this morning. Today, Hezbollah confirming a massive Israeli airstrike Friday killed its leader, Hassan Nasrallah, and a general in the Iranian Revolutionary Guard. He wasn't another terrorist, he was the terrorist, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said. Israel continued its bombardment across Lebanon today, targeting what it says are key weapons manufacturing sites and smuggling routes.
You know, the intensification of this war is probably going to begin because Hassan Nasrallah was viewed as one who was preventing Hezbollah from launching the majority of its missiles and drones against Israel.
Since last week, hundreds have been killed, according to Lebanese officials, while the UN says tens of thousands have been displaced. Among those searching for safety, tens of thousands of Canadians.
I want to leave, but I'm scared to leave at the same time because I don't know what's going to happen on the way there.
Canada is not evacuating citizens. The only way out is via commercial flights, where the government is reserving seats.
We're trying to book tickets out, and then the tickets get canceled.
President Joe Biden renewed calls for peace deals in Lebanon and Gaza, but Iran has vowed revenge.
Whether that response is largely performative, meant to inflict damage but not too much damage, or it is something more than that. I think that's something that's going to be negotiated.
One key problem remains unanswered. Who will lead Hezbollah?
We're going to get a person that's going to want to revenge the death of their leader. That means attacks against Israel.
Today, Canada announced an additional $10 million in humanitarian aid for Lebanon, while calling for an immediate 21-day ceasefire at the Israel-Lebanon border. Heather.
Colton, thank you. Russia's top diplomat warned against trying to fight victory with a nuclear power, accusing the West of using Ukraine as a tool to try to defeat Moscow. The condemnation comes 3 days after Russian President Vladimir Putin said his government was considering lowering the threshold for the possible use of its nuclear arsenal. Some experts say the threat was designed to scare the U.S. and its allies as Ukraine seeks their approval to strike Russia with longer-range weapons. 2 Russian drone strikes on a hospital in northeastern Ukraine killed at least 9 people and wounded 21 others. One of the buildings was hit while patients and staff were evacuating. The death toll from Helene is rising. The massive storm now blamed for at least 50 deaths after making landfall as a Category 4 hurricane. Millions are still without power as multiple states report catastrophic flooding. Here's CTV's Paul Hollingsworth.
Hurricane Helene has unleashed its fury in the southeastern U.S., a region that has endured its share of tropical storms.
It's physically and mentally exhausting.
A deadly Category 4 hurricane left a catastrophic mix of destruction and historic flooding.
The priority now is saving lives.
The punishing aftermath is shocking and heartbreaking for residents in 5 southern states.
We were fighting this thing in the darkness. It's so much worse in the daylight.
Helene made landfall in Florida's Big Bend region on Thursday. Instead of tracking north and moving up the eastern seaboard like many previous hurricanes, Helene turned left and ripped through the southeast. In western North Carolina, rescuers and stranded residents paused in shock as a house floated by.
Oh my God.
The swath of damage is unlike anything storm chaser Omar Gonzalez has ever seen.
I witnessed, flooding. I witnessed gas stations that were just completely destroyed.
Canadian Robin Yeatman was braced for the worst when Helene made landfall in Tallahassee.
Didn't expect a roof to be on my house when I came home, but apparently the storm moved about 10 miles west before it hit us.
There are massive power outages, including hundreds of thousands of Florida residents.
There have been about 1.5 million restorations since the storm began, and those restorations are continuing.
Helene has caused billions of dollars in property damage, and there are reports of insurance companies canceling homeowners insurance following the damage that was caused during last year's hurricane season.
So there may be people that weren't able even to get insurance.
FEMA is prepared to offer financial assistance for uninsured homeowners. The agency's first priority is to lead rescue and recovery efforts. Paul Hollingsworth, CTV News, Halifax.
Persistent monsoon rains in Nepal's capital have unleashed floods and landslides, leaving at least 66 people dead and dozens missing. Massive rainfall inundated thousands of homes, leaving residents stranded on rooftops or elevated ground. Security forces, including the Army, were deployed to help rescue people with helicopters and motorboats. The pressure keeps ramping up for international students trying to make Canada a forever home. As Ottawa tightens the cap on study and work permits, students say they're being left in the dark with their future on the line. Some calling the rules unfair, pointing to the number of people who enter the country as permanent residents. CTV's Kamal Karmali explains.
Here at this university in Toronto, students from abroad feel like they're carrying the weight of the world on their shoulders.
I am honestly very scared.
Tasneema Ahmed is an international student. Her next step would have been getting a postgraduate work permit, but with the new rules introduced, she might be sent back home to Bangladesh, where hundreds were killed in clashes this summer.
It's honestly very terrifying to think to have to go back at this situation now.
We need to adjust accordingly.
Earlier this month, Ottawa announced it's limiting international study permits by another 10% next year, while also introducing tighter restrictions for obtaining work permits after graduation.
And a lot of students are kind of like left in the limbo. It's like, I don't know what my future now holds.
It's Ottawa's response to a Canada-wide housing shortage. But at the same time, Canada continues to hand out tens of thousands of what's called invitations to apply each year that allows people from abroad to sign up for permanent residency. That means anyone, including working professionals. This month alone, there were nearly 6,000 invitations issued. Some groups argue if this many invitations to apply for permanent residency are still being given out to many foreign workers, then there shouldn't be policies that only target students.
We are providing some benefits to certain groups of people in our society and saying that other components of our immigration system, people are no longer welcome or no longer wanted. So very much it is a divide and rule,
leaving students with fewer opportunities to stay in Canada.
The rules have changed in the middle of the game. Time is working against these students, leaving them in massive crisis.
Now, Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship Canada says most of the invitations to apply are actually for students coming off of postgraduate work permits and looking for a pathway to permanent residency.
But it wouldn't say how many of those invitations are for foreign workers and how many would be issued to students. Just that it's continuing to explore options to support the transition of temporary residents to permanent residents. That doesn't change how many international students feel.
Do you think the international student demographic of all the migrants is being unfairly targeted?
Yes, every day you're living with an expiry date on your head, because you don't know what tomorrow holds.
Not knowing where to turn next.
I feel like it's very unfair. Doesn't exactly make sense when we've been putting our heart and soul into all our studies.
Hoping the rules will be the same across the board for all migrants. Kamel Karamali, CTV News, Toronto.
The country will honor the 4th annual National Day for Truth and Reconciliation on Monday. But today, Rideau Hall invited guests to reflect and learn about the residential school system and its long-lasting impact. Here's CTV's Kimberly Johnson.
That was the only source for light.
This is a traditional oil lamp that Inuit elder Aiga Atagutsiak says helped her people survive some of the world's harshest climates.
That was the only source we have for heating, cooking, and lighting when it was 24 hours dark.
It's a tradition and tool passed down by those like her mother, who she says lived to 103 and passed away in December. She says speaking about her and their culture comes with great pride.
My ancestors survived in a very cold tundra place for ancient years, and the only survive is by the Qibla.
A presentation taking place at Rideau Hall is part of an open house ahead of the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation. For Atagutsiak, being chosen to speak hits close to home.
I am so honored to be here because we were not recognized that we are on this earth and that we are one of the first. Slowly we are being recognized who we are.
Visitors from all over the world are invited to better understand a dark time in history within the country in an effort to confront the past.
I love enrichment through cultures or because of cultures from all over the world. And I really love the presentation here today.
It was really interesting for me to see people actually talking about their experience and how they grew up.
Outside in the Heart Garden, messages of hope from guests are on display. Families who come through, like the Kaplans, asked to draw or write those messages. They say it's important for their son Adam and the next generation to understand the past.
It's incredibly important for us to live in a country where everybody is free, but that we also remember what happened in the past and that we never forget that.
Kimberly Johnson, CTV News, Ottawa.
Canada's Heritage Minister is set to make history as the first openly lesbian cabinet minister to take parental leave. Pascale St-Onge says she plans to work virtually starting early November around the time her wife is due to give birth, then reduce her public presence for a few weeks. The Quebec MP told the Canadian press she's sharing the news because she has a responsibility to continue the fight for LGBTQ rights. Living paycheck to paycheck has left more Canadians walking a financial tightrope. The cost crunch squeezing household budgets, forcing people to find solutions. CTV's Alison Bamford on just how many Canadians are now feeling that pressure.
When times are tough, something's got to give.
Maybe your mortgage payment doesn't stop, or your rent doesn't stop, or your car payment doesn't stop. What often falls to the wayside, sadly, is food.
The Regina Food Bank opened a second location, a grocery store model, so users can fill their own carts and the organization can fill the growing demand.
We've seen sharp increases in users amongst those that work full-time, new Canadians, university students, and retirees.
Pocketbooks feeling the pinch across the country. Survey results from the National Payroll Institute show 1 in 4 Canadians are living paycheck to paycheck and would be unable to meet financial obligations if their pay was delayed by just 1 week. These days, a large portion of spending goes to debt.
Mortgage debt, but Canadians are also accumulating a lot more credit card debt.
Oh, wow. One of the motivators moving more shoppers to buy secondhand.
Over the last 6 years, I think our economy shifted, so we've seen people convert their retail mindset.
New data from Value Village shows 90% of Canadians have shopped at or donated to thrift stores.
There's a lot of pluses with thrifting. Helps the environment, helps your pocketbook. It's fun too.
But that fun can fade, the National Payroll Institute says. Nearly half of Canadians feel financially stressed, according to its report, up slightly from a year ago.
Everybody wants to get paid more, but it's the habits and what you do with the income that you have that's going to make the difference of whether you're financially stressed.
Financial literacy is just one piece, experts say, in a very complex puzzle that includes addressing housing prices and food insecurity. Allison Bamford, CTV News, Regina.
Coming up, the dark side of solar power.
We were never told that the system size would be an issue.
The unexpected cost to Canadian homeowners trying to go green. Plus, the Free Tree campaign for those devastated by Nova Scotia fires. The Nova Scotia communities hard hit by wildfire last year celebrated new growth today. Families in Hammonds Plains and Upper Tantallon received a donation of trees.
As we are rebuilding homes, people are moving back. We are now looking to practice reforestation in the devastated communities.
Northern Pulp donated 6,200 trees that were divided between roughly 100 families. Professional tree planters were on site to show how to properly plant them. More than 150 homes were lost in the wildfires last May. More Canadians are putting solar panels on their homes to save on electricity bills and cut carbon emissions. But some homeowners are now being faced with unforeseen complications clashing with insurance policies. CTV's Kathy Lee finds out why.
They soak up sunlight and turn it into electricity for homes. Better for the environment, better for the wallet.
It looked like, yes, this is going to save us money long term.
But for David Bond, it might not. Professionals put in $45,000 worth of solar panels on his home that he says his insurance broker said wouldn't be a problem. But after installation, he was denied coverage.
We were never told that the system size would be an issue.
And he's not the only one facing insurance problems.
We sold extra power in the summer, got a credit, and then we used that credit in the winter when solar's not as good. Their view was that any sale is considered a business, and they don't do businesses.
It's right on that line of professional misconduct to say from anybody else that this is selling or income or whatever, because it's been certified to not be. It is a bill reimbursement.
The Canadian Renewable Energy Association says more Canadians are putting in solar panels. Between 2021 to 2023, there's been a 650% increase.
Solar is the cheapest way to add electricity now, and so it's happening worldwide.
Which means more people need their homes insured with the added panels.
If they don't provide you with the coverage that you're looking for, there's likely going to be other providers that will.
Bond did go to other insurers, but each one had different parameters for coverage.
Some will tell you you've got to be under this many kilowatts. Some will tell you you can't have a system that's worth more than X dollars.
Experts say the inconsistency across insurance companies is frustrating.
If you have a legally inspected system that was permitted and installed by professionals, that should be the end of the conversation.
I just wish the insurance companies could actually make up their mind on what they were doing and make it clearer.
For now, Bond is hoping he can still work something out with the company. Kathy Lee, CTV News, Calgary.
Still ahead, taking flight. The SpaceX launch that aims to return 2 long-delayed Starliner astronauts. SpaceX has launched its rescue mission to bring 2 stranded astronauts home.
Ignition, full power, and liftoff.
NASA launched the downsized two-person crew today, bound for the International Space Station. There are 2 empty seats reserved for Butch Wilmore and Sonny Williams, Boeing's Starliner astronauts who've been stuck at the ISS since June. Because of how NASA rotates crews approximately every 6 months, the flight won't return to Earth until February.
There's no real risk here, right? It's just an 8-day work trip extended to 8 months, and you have to explain that to your family.
By the time they return, the pair will have logged more than 8 months in space. A star-studded night in Canadian music with 4 new inductees to the Canadian Songwriters Hall of Fame. Can you feel that? Tom Cochrane, Sarah McLachlan, along with Blue Rodeo's Jim Cuddy and Greg Keeler, were all ushered into the Hall of Fame. The musical celebration honors Canada's most influential songwriters. A lot of talent right there. After the break, the size and scale of a huge discovery, unearthing a massive dino skull in Alberta. Digging deep can sometimes unearth a discovery for the ages. Paleontologists have pulled out a giant skull of a dinosaur that wandered through Alberta's Badlands more than 70 million years ago. Here's CTV's Rachel Crowe spreading wings on what happens next.
Paleontologists believe this is the biggest dinosaur skull, about the size of a baby elephant, that's ever been uncovered from this site near Grande Prairie, Alberta. The find, fondly referred to as Big Sam.
It's a very large skull, but it also has a lot of features that we've never actually seen before in this particular species of dinosaur.
Making the find even more remarkable, it was preserved upside down.
And because of that, there's a lot of features that are preserved that are often lost in preservation. So, for example, the articulation of the head with the frill is preserved, which is not something we've actually seen in another Pachyrhinosaurus skeleton. We also have the brain case preserved, so that's really exciting. It means that we can potentially reconstruct the brain of a Pachyrhinosaurus.
Northern Alberta is the only place where this dinosaur has been found.
It is an endemic species. So this is a species of dinosaur that's found here in the Grande Prairie area and nowhere else in the world.
It's a hugely important fossil site. It's a real treasure trove of scientific information.
The species was named after the Grande Prairie science teacher who discovered the bone bed full of these dinosaurs back in the 1970s.
His name was Al Lacusta. He was a high school teacher in Grande Prairie. And he was just walking down Pipestone Creek and he came across the first fossils and followed them up the hill, and he identified the bone layers.
It's a site where we have a lot of dinosaur bones that are disarticulated, so it's individual bits and pieces, not intact skeletons.
Now that the skull is out of the ground, the preparation process will begin.
There's still a lot of rock attached to the skull, and that rock will have to be cleaned off.
It's a time-consuming process, and it could be a while until the public gets to see it in person. Rachel Crowe, Spreading Wings, CTV News, Edmonton.
What a find. That is our newscast for this Saturday night. I'm Heather Butts. For all of us at CTV National News, thank you for watching. Good night, and I'll see you again tomorrow.